So welcome, I'm Kathy, I'm from Microsoft for Startups based out of Sydney. It's brilliant to have you all today for the topic of how to prepare for your first pitch with an investor. We've got Michael Distel here from Cocoon Capital based in Singapore. Thank you for being here, Michael. I'm going to throw over to Michael in a sec to introduce himself and all about his background and what he's going to bring to the forefront today for you all. And just to give you a little recap on what it is that we're covering, this is an introduction on how to prepare yourself for meeting your first investor. So pitching to investors successfully is not an easy mission, but it's such a necessary one. And the more help you can get, the better. It needs practice and experience. I guess your first time pitching will be something similar to your first time giving a presentation in front of a crowd, but the only difference is that this time you're not questioning the fact that the audience are judging you. You can be quite sure of that. So here we are going to talk about how to find the investors, how to know if an investor is right for you, how to be mentally prepared, and what documents you need to prepare. So some of you have submitted questions prior to this session, and Michael has woven them into his deck today. So anything you've asked already will be covered throughout, but this is all about the in-person. Michael is here to chat through the subjects that sort of come up as you think of them. You know, if you've gotten some since you've suggested the questions before, drop them into the chat, or I guess Michael will we follow his lead on how we can sort of unmute and mute and all that sort of stuff. But for now, I'm going to throw it to this session is recorded, so it will be available afterwards. If you wanted to share, I guess, with your teams, or if you feel like you're really wanting to listen today rather than making notes, please just be assured that you will be able to listen to it at a later date. So Michael from Cocoon Capital, tell us all about you and what you're going to bring today.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So, as you said, my name is Michael. I'm from Cocoon Capital. I have a history of working in startup. I worked for 5 startups before. 3 of them were actually either merged or acquired. Most of those times I was just a software developer. But eventually I worked myself up to be a CTO. So I have a very strong technical background, which is quite rare in my industry. Currently today, I'm an associate at Cocoon Capital. So what's an associate? Associate is someone who basically reviews and looks at pitches and decks to bring forward to our investment committee to review, right? So it's a person that you're going to meet the first time is probably going to be me, right? Or someone similar to my role. And because of that, I have a fair bit of experience from when I was in startup, had to pitch. So I sat on that side a lot, and then I changed sides. I came to the dark side about 2 years ago, and now I sit on this side of the table. So hopefully I can share a lot with you guys. I really would like this to be an interactive session. So if anyone wants to jump in, ask any questions, feel free. I don't mind if you unmute yourself and ask. That's also perfectly okay. If you're very shy and don't want to maybe jump in, feel free to throw it into the chat. I have got a series of questions that were given to me beforehand, and then what we'll do is we'll just go through those first. I will have a look at those questions, then I'll let anyone ask any more questions, and if there's time left over after that, I might just give you some tips and advice about how to prepare for the sessions, for the pitching, or to interacting with the investor, just random things that I can share with you. And then at the end of that, if there's still time left over, I'm quite willing to hear anyone give their 30-second pitch to me, right? Based on everything I said. So 30 seconds, literally 1-2 sentence only. If you can do that, then that's really awesome too, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so let's start. Let me share my screen so I can share with you the presentation. So just let me know if you can all see it. Should be okay.
All good here?
All good. All right. So let me click through this. And this side here. So I broken down the questions that you guys shared with me into a few, like grouped them together, right? One of them is sourcing and finding an investor. So people ask, this is a very common question. How do I find an investor? How do I reach out to them? You know, is it okay to send a pitch deck to them? Is all these kind of things, right? So the number one way I always recommend everyone to reach out to an investor is through their portfolio companies. So go and find out who they invested with first, right? Go and have coffee with those founders, right? This is a great opportunity for you to also ask about the investor, right? So part of it is not just about you getting an investor and finding money, but finding the right investor for you. And you need to do your DD or due diligence to kind of ask them what kind of investor they are so that you know you're getting the right one. Then they can make an introduction. If any of the founders of our portfolio companies does ask me to talk to another founder or another potential startup, I will always meet them because I know they won't introduce me unless they also believe in that company too. So that is a really good way to reach out. The other thing is email, LinkedIn, all those kind of things is really good, but make sure, right, when you do reach out to them that you apply through their normal deal flow. Don't try to get around the way that we do our application process. We get a lot of applications, we get a lot of people seeking funding from us. And if you try to go around the system too much, you might actually get left out. We might miss you. So for Cocoon, the way that we do it is every week we have about half a day session together as a team where we will review all the pitches and all the decks that apply to us. So make sure you actually apply properly as well. But to get that introduction, go to the portfolio companies. Yeah, and it's perfectly okay to send your decks, reach out, email, these kind of things. But the only thing that I ask is be a bit patient because we do take a long time to go through the deck. Sometimes we get a big influx of them and then it might take me a week or two, and it's okay to chase. It's my job after all. It's my job to reach out, find startups, to read these pitches and decks. So sending to us is perfectly fine with the introduction. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is events. Try to go to events as much as you possibly can. The other thing is, if you don't feel that you're ready to do your presentation, if you just want to ask advice, mentoring, just get to feel of the investor, that's perfectly fine too. So I always tell people, if you want to come and ask for advice about your pitch or your deck, that's fine. You can just write in your email and say, Michael, can you look at our pitch? Is it any good? Am I missing anything key? And normally I will help out. But as soon as you say this is for pitching for money, it's a part of the application, I change my hat. I put on a different hat and I am more judgmental about the way that the pitch is actually made. And I'm looking for key points, right? So it is okay to kind of ask for mentoring as well if you're not ready. All right, cool. Next question is the pitch deck itself. So a lot of people ask how long or short it would be. It really depends on the investors. Some investors want long ones, some want short ones. But for me, the thing that I realized over the years in the startups that I worked for is that they usually will have different kind of investors read it in different ways. So some investors are very visual. They read everything you have on your slides and they don't really listen to you that much. Some listen to every word you said but don't read the slides. So you have to make the slides stand out by themselves, right? So that they can tell everything you want to communicate within the slides without you needing to talk through them, but you also need to be able to talk across the slides as well if need be. So I like to have each slide to be about a minute in length, right? If it takes longer than a minute to read everything on your slide, you probably have too much information inside, right? Most people, the biggest kind of problem that most people have is they dump too much information in. So instead of giving good context about what they want on the slide, they'll just put this wall of text on there, which is usually not a good idea because you lose focus with inside the pitch. So I'd say roughly, if it takes you about a minute to read a slide or go through a slide, that's about right. And so if you got a 30-minute pitch deck, then you should have probably about 15 slides, a minute or two, right, from the start to the finish to ask questions, right? If you only got a 15-minute one, maybe you only have like 7 slides or 10 slides so that you can leave some time to ask questions at the end. Should you have different pitches for different investors? Absolutely, because different investors, there's different style of investors. We have investors who are very focused on certain industries, some who are very focused on later stage, earlier stage. We have things like VCs, where I'm from, venture capital. We're looking for these, 20 times, 30 times of investment. Then you have angel investors. Each one have a different kind of mandate, right, that they're looking for. It's your job to kind of do a bit of research beforehand and try to get that done first, right? Build a one-liner, how to build a one-liner for the pitch deck, right? So a one-liner is really when you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. There a question? No. Okay. So one-liner for the pitch deck is, you know, really if you have product market fit. If you know exactly what your product's trying to achieve, it's usually you can sum it down to one line. But that's a really hard thing to do. For most of the startups I worked for, it took probably more than a year for us to really fine-tune what we're trying to do with the product. Okay, next question. And by the way, anyone can jump in if they want to ask more questions or if they want me to clarify, right? What is the most important section in the pitch deck? It's always the opportunity. So a pitch deck is usually made out of your problem that you're trying to solve, right? A business problem you're trying to solve, you know, how that fits inside the market. And so what's the opportunity, what solution you have, you know, your team, your traction, your pricing model, and then usually how much you want from the investor. So definitely the problem statement is the key part because that will highlight to us what the opportunity is. So you need to highlight what business problem you're solving and how much is that worth in the market, right? So that's the part I would focus on the most, right? Same thing, if you have very limited time, you know, elevator pitch, just go straight to the opportunity that you're trying to solve, right? Is this a $20 billion problem? Is this a $5 million problem, right? And everything is somewhere in between those two usually, right? So you need to try to highlight that as fast as you possibly can so that we know if we're the right investor for you. All right. So another question that a lot of people ask me, and this is quite a big one usually, is how to increase your valuation, right? How to get a bigger valuation from your investor, right? Valuation in seed stage is a little bit different than in later stages. So in later stages, valuations are usually very connected to your metrics, how much traction you've got, a multiple of your revenue, for example, or a multiple of your GMV, right? It's calculated, it's a calculated thing, usually with financial models. In seed stage, you don't really have that traction. You don't have those numbers. You don't have those things. You're really just pitching a hopes and dreams, right? So when it's at this early stage, the things that you need to highlight the most is, once again, the problem. Is the problem big enough? Is the problem a good opportunity to try to solve? And are you the right people to do it, all right? And then it's not necessarily that you're all like ex-Microsoft, ex-Google, ex-Facebook, right? It's that you really are passionate about that kind of problem that you're trying to solve and that you're knowledgeable on it, right? Then valuation is then dictated usually by market forces, right? What I mean by market is how much currently is the market willing to give a startup? Is it $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, right? For example. And then usually most investors want about 20% of the company for that. And that's how you work out your valuation. It's just what the money that you need, and you're going to give away about 20%. And you can usually do the maths to make it a bit easier. If people want me to go into how to do that calculation, I can.
Hey, Michael, can I ask a quick question about the previous slide? It feels like that's kind of, you know, a lot of time will be spent by the startups getting all of this together and getting it right. Yep. In your experience, have you ever seen this like common mistakes being made where that you could identify with any of those 5 points where a startup maybe lingers on something too long, or anything that you come across very often that's a common mistake that can be avoided?
Yeah, I would say that the most common mistake that I see is when there's too much detail and not enough context. So you know, a lot of times when people are pitching to us, they want to convince us a lot of times that, you know, the solution is a good solution. You know, this is the right solution for the job. Most of the time, we kind of trust whatever the founders say is a good solution. What we really want to know is the context of how that fits in a bigger market. So, you know, is it a big opportunity, for example, or a small opportunity, right? How is the company's going to use your product versus how great or how deep a technical knowledge that someone will give inside the deck. So it's that broad kind of context versus details that's usually pretty important. Too much focus on the solution. A lot of the times, you know, we're investors in the end. We are mostly interested in financial gains, usually from making money. That's our job. It's our mandate. So a lot of people don't put enough financial information into the deck. They don't put enough numbers into the deck. They don't speak our language in the end. They just like to talk about the product. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. We're going through these quite, yeah, but that's okay. We can always do the question later. So the next section I called like data and strategy a little bit, right? So someone asked, is there a way to replace market size if there's no research on that market? So let's say if you have a solution or you're trying to solve a problem, and you know, normally the next slide that comes after that is, you know, how big a market is this, right? Now, sometimes you end up in the situation where there is no real research in there. It's no easy way to find out what the size of the market is. But this is what I meant about context again. You can still put into the context of the situation that you're trying to sell in. You might know how many companies exist in a certain region or area. So you might know that, okay, say in Singapore where I am, there might be 200,000 different companies, and you know that you can target maybe 10 or 20%. It can be rough numbers. It doesn't have to be super precise and detailed, but it has to have context, right? So it's better to give that kind of rough estimation than to completely leave it out or to use something else, right? How to formulate a business strategy with the VC. Yeah, it really depends on the business, right? We for Cocoon, we cover a lot of different kind of business models, everything from deep tech to biomedical solutions to enterprise to SaaS, and each one has its own strategy. At the seed stage, there isn't, I wouldn't say that we're going to force you to follow some kind of logic of some sort, but we would want to see that you've thought about it very carefully, you know, that you have the answers to a lot of our questions. To me, that's more important than having a particular formula to success, or it's just got to have the basics of you've really thought about the solution. All right. How to make the meeting wholesome. I think one of the things that a lot of people, kind of going back to the previous question, people don't really try to understand the investors sometimes, where we're coming from. And, you know, a lot of the pitches is about telling us about your business and how good you are and how strong the team is and how good the business model is. Sometimes the founders don't spend enough time thinking about what is in it for the investors. Why are we sitting at the table? What do we want from this interaction? So I found the founders who are the most wholesome, or the best kind of conversations that we have, is the ones where they understand why we're there and we understand why they're there, and we can kind of work backwards and forwards with each other to make sure that we work as a partnership to move forwards.
Michael, on that note, I have a question. So so the startup need to be well prepared before going to any VC or any investors, right? So what are the top 5 questions they can expect from a VC on their one-on-one meeting?
Yeah, so I think the 5 questions would probably be is, tell us about the market opportunity. Tell us more about the problem that you're trying to solve. in that market. And usually what I'll do in my head is I do a little bit of maths, right? To say, okay, let's say if I look at your problem statement, and let's say it's a, $1,000 problem statement, someone's willing to pay $1,000 a month to solve that problem, and the market has maybe 20,000 people who want to do it, then I can just easily do in my head, 20,000 times 1,000, so that I know what size the potential revenue is for the company. So these two questions are very important. The third question is about the team. What makes the team special? Is it just that you're passionate about the industry? Is it that, you have long history or experience in that area? If you don't have the experience, or, you don't have the background in it, at least show the passion that you have for it. Not enough people spend time on their team slide. So when I listen to pitches from the US, for example, the US are very good at pitching, and they will spend a lot of time talking about themselves, how great they are, how fantastic they are, how passionate they are about what they're trying to solve. In this side of the world, we're not so eager to brag about ourselves, shall we say, and so we tend not to talk about ourselves that much. But when you're talking to the investor, you really need to show why you're the best team, right? Or why you are the right people to solve that problem, right? The other part of it is make sure that at the end of the presentation that you actually have an ask, right? So sometimes people send us pitches and decks, and they don't really have at the end of it how much money they want to raise, or what they're going to use that money they're going to raise for, right? If you want to say $1 million from Cocoon, then you have to say that at the end of the pitch, right? And you have to say with confidence why you want that $1 million. And this is where it usually comes down to a budget. So one of the first things that we'll always ask for after the pitch is, please show me the budget that explains why that's the right amount of money for you, right? So these are the main things that we ask for, which is pretty good. Right. Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? We've been talking a lot, so. Mary.
Hi, Michael. I have a question about the ask.
Yeah.
So actually, in what way we need to show the our ask? I mean, for example, we are asking for $1 million, and then and we divide it into OPEX and marketing and IT infrastructure. So,
yeah.
So is the right way to show the ask or something?
Yeah. So that's roughly about right. So in the ask, you really have, when you're saying, when the ask is to raise funds, right, is you've got to say how much money you want to raise. And that's based on how much you budgeted, right? You don't want to ask for too much. If you ask for too much money, you're going to dilute your company. You're going to give away too much of the company for a low valuation. So your aim is always to ask as least as you possibly can, right? And still meet your goals that you have. So we will always say, how much money do you need for 18 months? So 18 months is usually the standard in the industry, right? That gives you 12 months to meet your milestones, right? And then it gives you 6 months to go and raise funding again, right? So show how much in a budget, how much do you need for that? Answer your question?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Michael, I just have a question about the 18 months period. Is that how long is suggested? Because, to sort of perform another raise or to undertake another raise earlier than 18 months is really shooting founders in the foot, because they just cut out all of that work for themselves again to focus on how to raise again. So would you have any advice on how much time you need to give yourself, how much runway you need to give yourself so that you're not needing to raise again too soon?
Yeah, so I think what some people kind of miscalculate or forget is that, we say 18 months, but you start talking to the next set of investors at the 12-month mark, right? And that's when you present the milestones of what you've done, right? And that's when you negotiate your valuations and you negotiate your next level. The other 6 months after that is just to finish the legal work and the DD, right? So really, when you raise for 18 months, you're in reality giving yourself 12 months to reach a certain milestone. If you say made it 12 months that you wanted to raise the next one, then you only give yourself 6 months to get that traction, to hit the milestones that you have. And that's a very short period of time. It's very hard to hit those milestones. And then you run the risk of needing to do a bridge round or a smaller round first at a lower valuation, right? It's better to give yourself the good solid 12 months so that you can show real traction and then get very good valuations in the next round. Yep, I hope that does this answer your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important one to illuminate what, what everybody's going to be busy with.
Yeah. So sometimes people will make it 24 months, extend it out. So during the COVID period, when the world was very uncertain, some of the companies were coming and saying, look, we want to raise for 24 months because we think that there's going to be delays or problems, things like that. That's perfectly fine too. You can drag it out, but you just need to explain why you want to make it longer or shorter and have some really good, solid strategy and logic behind it.
Cool, so thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I just want to see if anyone else wants to ask any questions. We're here.
So Michael, it would be great if you can show us a good template for the ask slide.
A good template for the ask slide. Yeah, okay. I can probably do that. Just give me 1 second while I stop my sharing so I can find a deck. Maybe if someone else has a question while I'm looking for it, that would be really cool too. Okay. I think another thing that we could talk about a little bit is how to kind of mentally prepare for a pitch. So, when I was first fundraising for myself in my startups, I did a lot of, I was very nervous before I did my pitches. We're going to get judged. People are going to evaluate what I was going to do. I wasn't that knowledgeable at that stage, so I didn't really know what people were going to ask. Hang on. 1 second. So it was quite nerve-wracking for it was quite nerve-wracking when I did it the first time. Now, as an associate in Cocoon, I can listen to 10 pitches a day, right, and go through them all. So for me, it's something that I do, and I lose focus on. But for the founders, it's something that is super, super important to them. But one of the things I always like to stress to everyone is that it is a partnership, right? We need you just as much as you need us, right? It's not that we are in a stronger position because we have the money. We need to deploy the money. We also need to find really good founders. So it's good to have the mindset that it's more about a potential partnership that you're going to have than having someone come in there and be in a stronger position. It's definitely a two-way process that we work together. Just give me a second while I look for this deck. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen again. All right. So, yeah, there you go. I hope you can see the deck. So, you know, this is a very simple kind of ask page, right? How are you going to use the funds? What are you going to raise for? You know, when you first meet the investors, you don't need to share every little last detail. You don't need to break down everything to the last set of numbers. We can always ask for that information in the second meeting or the third meeting. Like I said, we would normally ask people to show us a budget, you know, with details inside that budget that breaks down everything. Is this what you were looking for?
Yes. It's nice and simple.
Nice and simple. Like I said, most of the time people make it too complicated, right? The more simple it is, the better. The other thing is, for a lot of the investors, we don't really, most of us don't have a lot of deep knowledge in the industries that we invest in. We have a lot of deep knowledge in, you know, market and what the market is actually doing, the market forces, how much capital is getting put into the market. But what we don't have a lot of knowledge on is solutions, usually, you know, the deeper tech part of it. So it's good to keep everything as simple as you possibly can. Then you can build a good story around it and be quite solid. All right.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. But I think it would be, I want to have an addition. That is, if you can show us which slides or which things we need to put on our pitch deck.
Yeah,
I think it would be great too.
All right. Let me give you another example. So I have a whole folder here of companies. So give me a moment, and I'll show you an example of one. Yeah. So another thing that we probably should talk about is, it's quite common for when you go out to pitch, even when I became better at it at the end, to get it rejected a lot. For example, Cocoon will only probably do about 6 deals a year that we actually invest in, but we probably get like 1,000 people apply to us. So we got a pretty high rejection rate. But we're rejecting them a lot of the time, not because of, you know, they're not a good company or they're not good to invest in, right? We're normally rejecting because we don't fit inside our mandate. So what do we mean by that? You know, what we mean is that we have a certain range that we invest in. If a company come and ask us for $100,000, for example, we wouldn't invest in them because it's too small. Or they might come and ask for $5 million, which is too high for Cocoon. The second thing is, a lot of VCs will invest in industries that they feel comfortable in. So this is where you do your research and you try to find the investor that fits you, right? It makes the process a lot smoother. It shows that you actually know what you're looking for too. All right. Okay, give me a sec.
Okay, in that case, Michael. So in that case, so we need to look for VC's investment size and their area of interest, and any other fields or any other criteria that we need to look for while find a VC.
Yeah. So for example, Cocoon only does B2B investments, right? So we don't do B2C. So if you came to us, for example, and you're going to make a new super app for food delivery or something like this, then we would reject on those grounds. Then also, so you got to kind of like, that's where it's good to talk to their portfolio companies, reach out to them, message them on LinkedIn, right? They can usually tell you what kind of investments that we do. You can also look from the list of portfolio companies if it's similar to the companies of your company, and that will give you a good indication as well. All right. So, okay. Let me share my screen again, and I'll show you one of the old companies I used to work for, Pitch Deck, to give you an idea. All right. So everyone can see this, right? I hope.
Yes,
Yeah.
Michael.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Right. So Foodraiser is one of the old startups that I used to work in. This is its pitch. Now, every company has a different style. Different investors like different things too, but generally they have the same format inside, which is first of all talking about the problem statement. Right. Now, the problem statement is some of the risks of doing the problem statement is sometimes people like to put social problems, right? So what I mean about that is, you know, we have climate change in the world at the moment. People feel tired at work, right? These are kind of social problems. What we really want is business problems, you know, things that we can actually connect directly with financial issues, right? Because we think like this, right? So if we're going to get a customer to pay for our solution, we have to kind of explain that the amount they're paying is worth solving that problem that they have, right? So it's got to be connected to how many hours it saves them, how much cost is going to save them, how much more money is it going to generate for them. These are very good kind of problem statements. And this is usually one of the first slides that you show, right? So in the case of Foodraiser, it's a SaaS solution for restaurants at the back of the restaurants when they're trying to manage their food costs and also these kind of things, right? Which is quite complicated for them, right? So we just quickly go through that part there. Then we say our solution. So the solution is the technical part of it. You know, are you a SaaS solution? Are you an enterprise solution? Are you going to be on the Azure marketplace, for example, to solve what technical problem, right? And then a little bit more about the actual product, right? So I'm going to go relatively fast through these, right? Because everyone's going to be a little bit different. But you can see that for the slide, someone asked how many slides you could have. If you look at our slides, you can go through each slide in about 1 or 2 minutes, right? No longer than that. If I was going to read this out aloud, I could do it within a minute, right? If you have more text than that, then it's usually a problem. Then the revenue model. So how are you going to make money? How are you going to monetize that problem that you're solving? Right? Are you going to be a subscription model? Are you going to be a one-off fee? Right? Investors love subscriptions, by the way. Monthly recurring revenue is fantastic. Yes, I can share the deck with you, no problem.
Michael, is there ever a moment where it's okay to come without some of that info in there? If a startup hasn't got their pricing down yet, if they're still kind of looking for investors' help on their subscription model, or is there ever a moment where some of this information can be missing at this point? Yeah.
It's perfectly fine, but what I would suggest is that when you reach out to the investor or an associate like me, tell them that you're not ready, right? Tell them that, you know, I'm still trying to work it out, because then what that will do is that will put on more my mentoring hat than my associate hat, right? Because as soon as I do my associate, I need to write a report about the pitch, and I need to have those numbers inside so I can report them to the investment committee or my bosses, right? So if you're not ready, it's better just to wait and get ready, but you can definitely reach out and ask for help.
Okay. Tiho just dropped a question in the chat. It would be great if you could suggest a brief answer for the question, how did you come up with your company evaluation, early stage startup?
Valuation, your company. Sorry, I don't quite understand the question. The value of the company. So we're talking about the valuation of the investment?
I think they're referring to investment valuation.
Yeah, investment valuation. Okay. So like I said, if it's a seed stage or pre-seed stage, the valuation is driven by how much money you need and whatever the market value is, right? So what I mean by market value is something you can't control really. How much is VCs and investors willing to pay for valuations in that region around the world? So in the US, for example, it's very common to have valuations $20 million for a seed fund or something like that. And then you give away 20% of the company and you might get $4 million or something like this, right? Really rough numbers there, that's not precise, right? In Southeast Asia, where I am, in Singapore, Vietnam, and all this, we don't have valuations that high. The competition is not so strong, and the amount of money that people actually need aren't that great either. So we're usually looking for valuations that are more like around the $4 million mark, $5 million mark, and giving away about $1 million. Once again, 20%. So the way that you work your valuation is work out first how much money you really need, right? Be very confident about the amount of money you need. Yep.
Michael, what about valuation in South Asia?
In South Asia, so it depends on the region. For example, India gets better valuations than, say, Sri Lanka would, just because of the markets.
So precisely for Bangladesh?
I don't know precisely because I do more Southeast Asia but it's usually connected to give you an idea, it's usually connected to cost to run the business, right? So if a region is kind of like cheaper to do business in, like labor cost is lower, then usually valuations are lower too. But if you can prove that you're going to take on a big market like the US and you have some traction in the US, then your valuation will skyrocket very quickly. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
But this is, once again, this is a good thing to go and ask the portfolio companies and the founders of those portfolio companies. They will usually have a very good idea of the valuations because they already went through the negotiation process. They know what the appetite of the investors are. Okay. Metrics on the presentation. If you don't know the exact numbers, sometimes people get really stressed out because they don't know, for example, the total lifetime value of the because you don't have any customers yet. So how do you know the total lifetime value, right? And you probably haven't had enough time. It is okay to put what you hope to achieve or what you're aiming to achieve, right? At least that gives us the context of what you're trying to achieve. As time goes on, as you get later stage in your investment, this can then become more precise, right? So when you do your Series A, Series B, Series C's, they're not going to want you to do estimations anymore. They will want you to do exact figures, right? But in the early stages, it's okay to guess. All right. So fundraising here, $400,000, and what we're going to use it for, right? So yeah, something like that. That's a fundraising ask slide there too. So normally when you show this slide, they're going to ask you what valuation you want to give to. Quite easy, quite a fast, easy presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Michael, I have a question. So nowadays it's very easy to get connected to investors, right? But still the startups are facing problems in getting connected to the right investors who can add value to their business. So yeah. Is there any, the strategy or best practices which startups can follow to get connected to the investors who can value add to their company?
Yeah, so I would say that the best way to evaluate, the way I used to evaluate the investors is I know I keep on saying this, but go and look at the portfolio companies that they have invested in. That will give you a very good indication of, what their focus is. Then the second part is when you interact with them, do they really care about understanding? Are they spending the time and effort needed to really understand what you're trying to do? So from my experience is if an investor will spend time with you to really try to understand what you're trying to achieve, maybe help you with your pitch a little bit, maybe help you with your budget, they're more likely to help you when time gets tough after the investment, to put their hand back into the pocket and help you again. So just remember it's a partnership. So if you don't like the interaction that you're having with them, then maybe they're not the right people. Now, some investors are, we call them shotgun investors. They don't really spend that much time with the investment. They just give cash and that's all they want to do. It saves them a lot of money in kind of like operations. That's okay too, if that's the kind of investor you want. If you think that you don't really need the help and support, then it's okay to go to an investor who will just give the cash. But if you really want to get someone to help you with your growth, help you do the legal work and the accounting and, you know, the corporate governance and trying to help you raise in the next round, then make sure you find someone who you feel comfortable with. Answer your question?
Yeah, makes sense. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
Michael, I have another question.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So you have mentioned VC love SaaS, but what about non-recurring model or pay-per-use model?
Yeah. So they're okay too. What you need to show with those is it's once again the financial model that you have. So if you want to have a business that say has a monthly revenue of $1 million, right? What resources are you going to require to close that? Let's say you do direct enterprise sale, right? So it's contract by contract by contract, and it's a one-time payment, right? Usually they require you to have a sales team of some sort, and that sales team is going to go out there and close those contracts for you. In that case, you need to show in your budget and your financial models, how is that going to work, right? Are you going to have 5 salespeople, 10 salespeople to close enough each month to get you the revenue that you need, right? That's usually what we'll focus on during that time. Reoccurring models like SaaS and all that, we feel more comfortable with, or we like them so much because it's usually easier for the startup to continue to have that baseline of revenue that they need every single month. And all they're doing is they're topping up on top usually. All right, it's not such hard work. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I hope.
I think yes. Customer Maksud Taif, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions if you might have.
Yeah. All right. I have a, if anyone would like to share their company, do a 30-second pitch at me, right? Or 2-sentence or 3-sentence pitch. I would love to hear it. If someone wants to stand forward and talk.
Yeah, I have a question actually. Actually, which valuation method you prefer? Actually, accept. There are lots of valuation method.
Yeah.
Suppose if we don't have any reference company against our company, and then what should be our valuation method?
Yeah. So it would depend on your stage. If you're early stage, very early stage, like seed or pre-seed or something like this, the valuation methods don't really work. Right? It's not how we value companies because you don't have any data, you don't have any traction. You've got, even if we do find another company that we can compare with, right? We can't usually compare because there's there's no data to compare. So it usually will come down to how much we like the team, right? That's what changes valuation. If we think the team is really, really strong, and also about how much money they really need to raise. We target, say Cocoon, and most investors are similar. We usually target to have about a 20% ownership. So it's a justification between how much you need to raise, how strong the team is, and then we can just do the maths from there.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So sometimes we found that actually some investor, they are actually multiplying with our with some number with our current revenue.
Mhm.
But you know that earliest revenue is not that great. But
Yeah.
we have so is it okay? So how when we're asking for something, so for what basis we should ask? When investor is actually evaluating our company, multiplying, suppose they are multiplying 30 or 20 with our current revenue. So is it not? It was not actually good for us. So
Yeah.
what should be the process actually in that case?
Yeah. So can I ask you a question, a quick question? How much is your revenue at the moment, if you don't mind sharing? So I can kind of
it's we were SaaS company, so it's almost 4,000 per month actually MRR.
Okay, MRR. So
400 US, sorry, 4,000 USD.
Yeah. So you're still very early stage, right?
Yeah.
So in early stage, at least for Cocoon, right, and the other seed funders, our valuation does not change with your revenue that way. We don't use a multiple on that. We don't even factor it in. We will factor it in more what we believe 5 years from now you will get, right, when we're trying to predict forwards, but we won't change the valuation today. If in the future, let's say that if you get to your Series A or B or C, that's exactly what will happen. They will grab your revenue and they will use it as a multiple with your what we call your comparables. So what other companies we can compare with. So how do you get a better valuation in that situation? It's usually by making sure that you have a business model that has a good valuation. So a good example of that is if you have a business that's very hardware intensive or labor intensive, usually your multiple will be less. If it's a very lightweight, high gross margin business, you're making 90% margin, 80% margin, right? Then your multiple will usually be much better.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Anyone else have a question?
I have a question about, you mentioned a lot of the things you mentioned are from a VC perspective. What if we have an investor, a potential investor that would be interested in us that are a corporates? They're like a big company that they do and they are interested because they can see a potential synergy. What's the narrative going to be different? What's the dynamic going to be different? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So when I used to work for a company called Schneider Electric, and I used to work for their acquisition arm for a while, about 10 years ago. Their mindset was very different than, say, a VC mindset. A corporate investor usually is doing it to get synergy with their own company somehow, which can be good and bad depending on the situation. So it can be good because it's usually less of a negotiation. You don't have to show those multiples and those high valuations and all that kind of stuff. They usually will understand what you're doing a lot better. So you'll have all those kind of benefits. The bad thing is that once you take corporate money, sometimes other people won't invest in you. So, you might have a very strong, if I just pick some random companies, right? Microsoft might invest in you, for example, then maybe Google won't want to invest in you in the future, right? Or vice versa, right? So sometimes it can lock the doors once you take corporate money. And you can also lose customers too. If your customer was someone who's kind of a competitor to your corporate investor, you might lose out sales as well. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for asking the question. All right. Any other questions?
Okay, then I'll continue my question.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Have you experienced with a hybrid model of that, say a corporate VC?
Mm-hmm.
How about those guys?
Yeah, of course it's unique for everyone's unique. Every investor is unique too, right? So it depends on how decoupled they are from their parent corporate side. So I've worked with the Dyson vacuum cleaner company. They also have a VC arm. They're quite separated from each other, so they don't influence each other that much, which is quite good. But not all of them are like that. So it really comes to doing your research on each of the investors and seeing like the pros and cons of each one. I know that's not a very precise answer, but it really, really depends on that type of VC or investor.
Thank you.
No problem. There's another, since we're talking about different types of investors, there's another style as well called a family office that you could take money from. So a family office is usually a rich family of some sort that has set up a corporation or a fund to invest their money, usually with a professional group of people. So there's a fund manager and all this kind of stuff. They have different, very different mandates to a VC. So a VC, like ourselves, we have what we call our LPs, our limited partners, and we have kind of like a constitution that we need to follow, a mandate that we need to follow, and it's very structured. We have to get our 10 to 20 times on a return of our investment, because probably something like 8 or 9 of the companies out of 10 that we invest in will fail. So we have these very tight rules that we have to follow. A family office, on the other hand, because it represents a single individual or a single family, they usually aren't so strict. They can usually have a longer time period to think about. They can take lower kind of jumps in valuation than we can. So maybe they're happy with 3 times return on their investment or 4 times return on their investment, where we need that 10 or 20 times, right? Because we have a different model. They also sometimes will do things that are very more maybe for social impact reasons, and this is another way to think about selecting what investor you go after. Any other questions that people might have?
Yes, Michael, I want to know about investment readiness. So we were talking about pitch deck, but there are some other parts, other things that we need to care.
Yeah, so maybe what I can do is I can go through the whole process for you, from the moment you meet your investor to when you actually will get the funds in your bank account. So the process usually is that you'll go and meet your investor, you'll go and pitch to an associate like myself first. They will listen to it, they will do an evaluation. We start a report called an investment memo at that stage. So an investment memo is this big long document that I write, maybe 30 pages long, about your company. Inside there, evaluating different things, looking for good points and what we call red flags. If that meeting goes really well and we're interested, usually that will move on to meeting the managing partners of the fund. So basically my bosses, who will also listen to your pitch. So you'll have to pitch multiple times to us, right? When you pitch to an associate like me, we're usually a lot more flexible. We'll give you a bit of advice and tell you if you've gone astray. But when you're pitching to the managing partners, you probably only get maybe 1 shot to do it. They are less flexible because their time is a lot more restricted than ours. If they like it as well, then we'll usually move on to negotiating terms and offer a term sheet. So different VCs have different types of term sheets, and they do it at different parts of the process. Some give, you've heard of the write on a napkin on a piece of paper, here I give you $5 million for this valuation or something like that. If any VC does that to you, be very scared. Don't. It's always a problem when they tell you they make offers to you like this, but without all the terms and conditions inside. So Cocoon's term sheet is quite long. It's multiple pages long, like maybe 10 to 15 pages long. And it has all the different terms inside. This is where you get your lawyers, and your lawyers look at the terms too to say it's fair. Make sure you always get a lawyer who is experienced in startup world. There's a lot of different lawyers out there, right? But make sure you get one who has experience with them, because they can give you advice about what's fair in the terms. Then when that happens is we'll start the DD process. Some investors will start the DD process before the term sheet. Some will start after. So DD is due diligence, where we will look through everything. We'll go through all your bank accounts. We'll go through, we'll do reference calls for all the founders. We'll go and see your strategy plans that you have, your marketing plans you have. We'll go into a lot of detail. This details that we do will be used for my investment memo to build it out. So if you want to help the associate as much as you possibly can, just be ready to answer their questions as fast as you possibly can and as precisely as they can. The other thing is, don't over exaggerate, especially when you're getting close to the term sheet. Don't, in the effort to kind of sell the company, don't start lying or over exaggerate too much, because eventually we'll find out and it will look bad in the memo. Then after you meet everyone, it will go to the investment committee. The investment committee will then say yes or no for the investment. Then once they say yes or no, then we'll move ahead again and we'll start all the legal documents. There are two main legal documents that we work on, which is the investment agreement and the shareholders agreement. The lawyers get involved. We work out through all those kind of things. And this is where all the little details are worked out. Like, for example, do we have a board seat? What veto rights do we have? Who can sell what, when, what shares, right? This kind of stuff, liquidation preferences, that kind of stuff. Then once all that's done, at the end of it, the investor will fund into your bank account. All the documents will be closed off and signed, and the investment will be over. Usually this can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. The longest I've ever done is 6 months before. The fastest I've ever done is six weeks. It really just depends on the complexity of the deal. All right, like that. Does that answer the question? Or did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got a good synopsis on this.
Yeah. And if you have any particular questions about any of that, you can also ask too. Does anyone have any other questions? No?
Also take it as a great opportunity to pitch to Michael. As Michael mentioned, you can take 2-3 minutes and pitch to him. He can give you advices on how you can improve your pitch and all.
Yeah.
Yasser, Maksud, this is the time you can pitch your startups to Michael.
If anyone wants to give a very short pitch to me about what their business, or just, it doesn't have to be a pitch. It can just be you just telling me what it does, so I know better.
Hi, Michael. I'm representing Buy Now. So Buy Now is working for easy payment for SMEs and creating credit scoring for the unbanked SMEs especially, so that they will get the loan and banking facilities.
Okay. So which region are you going to work in?
Oh yes, we are working in Bangladesh. Currently, but we have a plan to scale globally, especially in the developing countries, since our we made the solution from the scratch, and we can scale it to any countries. Okay.
And do you have so what kind of revenue model do you have? Are you going to take a commission of interest off the loans? Are you more like an aggregator?
Oh, our revenue model is pay-per-use model. I mean, we are charging based on the transaction volume and size.
Okay, so basically you get a flat fee per transaction?
Yes, for flat and percentage, both. For example, for the payment gateway, we are charging 3.5% and 6 cents per transaction.
Okay. So when we usually listen to, so just to tell you what's going through my mind, right? When we listen to this kind of information, this is when I'm trying to work out the opportunity, right? So in my mind, I would be trying to think of, okay, how big's Bangladesh, right? How many people would be using this service, right? And out of that, how big will the transactions be, right? So when you're talking about all these things, these are what's crossing my mind, because from there I can work out, okay, what will your revenue be in the future, right? In 18 months from now, in 12 months from now, when we go and do the next round of funding, right? What milestones or targets can you have to get us to the next stage and to get us good valuation at that stage, right? So these are the kind of questions that you need to be able to answer very precisely, right? So if I asked you, for example, 18 months from now, 12 months from now, right? What would your revenue be looking at? Right?
Okay, our revenue will be $1.1 million. So based on the 22,800 users acquisitions.
How many users?
22,800 users.
And how many do you have now?
Right now, we are pretty early stage. I mean, in beta stage, right now we have 206 users.
Okay, so if I do really simple maths in my head, right, you're going to need about 20,000 users a month, right?
Yeah. No, well, in the year, 20,000 users.
So 20,000 a year.
In 12 months.
So by the end of the year, you want 20,000 active users, right? So each month you need to get on board about something like, let's just say 2,000 users every single month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then
1,700 users precisely.
Yeah. So my next thinking would be, okay, how are you going to do that? You know, what's your go-to-market, right? How are you going to get those 2,000 users? Is it going to be through marketing? Is it going to be, you know, direct selling, referrals, ambassadors, these kind of things?
So we'll do a mix and match. I mean, we'll deploy door-to-door salesmen first. Then we will use community-based marketing. We are partnering with different Facebook groups where 10,000, 20, 30,000 merchants are there. So we are trying to convince them and partnering with them to promote our product. And also we are partnering with different government organizations, banks, logistics company, and also we are going through with different training programs for entrepreneurs, district branding. I mean, there are 64 districts in Bangladesh, and we'll do district branding in every city of Bangladesh. So that's how we will grab the market. Okay,
that's cool. That's cool. So that's basically the way that we think about it, right? We go through that process of, you know, what problem are you trying to solve? You know, how big is the opportunity? And obviously there's a big opportunity, right? And then how you're going to take that opportunity and the cost of that. Right, and that will then eventually lead to how much money do you need to reach those milestones or those goals you've got, and do you have a really good budget for it? Right.
So it's a market. Actually, the total market size is more than $100 billion. Since it's the contribution of SMEs, and right now only one MFS is dealing with around few $1 billion right now. So and we have chance to manage similar type of market value while we can do the business.
Yeah.
And for this we are asking $510,000 for 12 months.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that sounds pretty good, right? So you just need to work through that and do the pitch, right? You can always happy to send it to me once you've done it too, and I can have a look for you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So I see someone's hand is raised.
This is Ganesh here from FluxGen.
Hi, Ganesh. Yeah, would you like to do a very fast pitch at me too?
Sure. We are a water intelligence platform. You know, industries are in massive imminent risk because of the impending water crisis. Major 4 risks include financial risk because the cost of water is increasing. The indirect cost of water is also 10x to 100x depending on energy pumping purification. The compliance risk is again becoming more because it's affecting the country's GDP. And the reputational risk because of the ESG associated environmental reputation risk is also another big risk. And last but not the least, the climate risk. I mean, you said that if climate change is sharp, what is its teeth? It directly affects the hydrological cycle of the world has changed, because of which the availability of water has changed. So here we come up with our thesis is that like water as a liquid is transparent and clear. What if you make the data of water transparent and clear and build solution on top of it? Can you solve this problem? And we believe yes, and we have developed a data science and IoT based platform to exactly measure, monitor, and analyze and give prescriptive alerts for industrial water users to make sure that they are away from the risk that I mentioned. And so far we have 40 plus industries, including the mostly the listed companies, the Tatas, the Vedanta, Britannia, some of the top names in it, especially food processing, beverage, and the metals and mining. And we want to scale our operations and build more data science approach, more accurate data science approach in exactly predicting the water risks and giving solution to this industry. So we want to raise fund for that. We are looking for about $1 million fund.
Okay, cool. So because this is kind of more like mentoring, right? So let me give you a little bit of feedback, right?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that was quite long-winded, right? So what I mean is you tried to share, from my point of view, you tried to share a little bit too much information in this kind of small setting, right? So if you're doing an elevator pitch and, we're just walking up the stairs, or, just as we're walking out of a building, I would try to shorten it a little bit and get to the main points, right? The second thing that I would probably give a bit of feedback to is when you talked about the problem statement, you talked about a lot of social problems, right? But the thing that I missed out on, or I didn't maybe understand, or I missed, right, is I didn't really understand how much of a business problem this is, right? And, so everyone knows Sequoia, right? The big fund, right? So I heard one of their partners one day say that when you're talking to investors, every 10th word that you say should be a financial metric or a number, right? So when you're going through those social problems, you should have backed them up with how much they were costing the companies, right? With some kind of number of some sort, right? It's costing them X amount of time and effort. It's costing them, you say there's a financial risk in there, or, it could be a risk for the future. It's potentially cost them $10 million, for example, just as random example, right? Trying to mix inside of there a little bit more, it will give it more substance to what you're saying, and it will help me do the calculation of the opportunity in my head, right? Okay. When I work out the market.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, just remember, we are finance people, so we just keep on thinking about financial numbers. I'm always just doing maths in my head most of the time. Like that.
Surely, I think I should emphasize on what is the how do you compute the risk and show it to the investor, and what's the gain for the customers in terms of financially, and what's the leverage that they get in the market.
Yeah, exactly, right. Remember, when we're a business, a for-profit business, right, we always need to work out a way to extract money out of our customers. Right, that's our job. That's what a business is. Getting paid for some service that we're offering. And I don't know about you, but I mean, most people don't like to pay for things, right? So we need to be convinced that the problem we're trying to solve is something that people are willing to pay for. People are willing to pay for stuff. It's just that we don't want to do it. It's like pulling out our teeth. Right, so you've got to show that the opportunity and the problem is big enough to do that.
Right. Sure, Michael. Thank you so much for the feedback.
Yeah, no problem. So I remember before someone said about market sizing, it's a $100 billion market or a $10 billion market. I wanted to give a little bit of feedback that to be careful with these kind of statements, right? That if their market size is too big, right? I will ignore it, because it's, as small startups, it's very unlikely that we can chase after a $10 billion market in the next 18 months, right? Maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, absolutely, we can totally do that. We can conquer those markets. But it's good to also give a market size that you're going to target early in the process as well, right? So, you know, we're going to target 10% of the Bangladeshi merchants or something like this, right? Then, and how big is that, right? How much are we, what market size are we targeting in the first 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? Then just go straight to the biggest number possible. Right. Cool. Does anyone else want to pitch or ask any questions in the last couple of minutes?
Yes, I want to say about something about our company. Yes, we are a social CRM. That's when every brand has a presence in social media, but they don't know their customer in social media, and as they're expanding regularly there, but they don't know their ROI, and also they are actually don't able to serve the customers from the touch point of the social media. So we are here to solve this problem. We are actually the customer growth solution. So we try to provide their ROI. We can work as a help desk for customer and also work as a lead management for social CRM. So our actually we are working mainly. We start working for SME and brands, but after a few years we find that our product is good fit for brands. So we are now targeting brand, and our average acquisition price for per brand is 500 to 800 USD per month. And in Bangladesh, we found that we have more than 5,000 actually brand who can use our application. And currently we are serving 10 brands actually, 10 brands, and our monthly MRR is 4,000 plus. And our target is in next 12 months we want to acquire acquire more than 100 plus brand, and our target MRR would be 100K actually per month target MRR. So for this we need to acquisition 15 to 20 brand per month, and so to make this possible we need investment of actually 300K for a year.
Okay, sounds good. Like it's good from the feedback point of view, right? I like that you had a fair bit of numbers in there. That gave me a very good understanding of the market you're going after, the size of the market, how much you're going to get from each of the customers, and then from there I can work out the kind of the value of the opportunity that you had. So that was really good. That's a good example of that. And then the coupled with you were asking for the $300,000, which sounds quite fair for the market you're going for, right? Yeah, that's pretty good. Is there any particular question you'd like me to ask about it?
Yeah, so actually we already able to manage the pre-seeds actually. So now we are looking for seeds. So is it this amount is okay for seed funding?
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect for seed funding. 300,000. It's for Cocoon, that's a little bit lower than we would normally go after. But I think for your business model and Bangladesh, I think 300,000 sounds quite reasonable to me.
Yeah, so we are now operating in Bangladesh, but we are planning to operate in other countries, actually starting from Southeast Asia, then in other. So we already start some actually operation with Cambodian-based company and another company in Nepal. So if we are able to success those actually, then we start operating in other countries. Yeah. Then maybe in that case, then we need more funding actually for growth.
Yeah, so that's usually how it works. Your seed funding is used to kind of get proof of what you're doing or whether or not you get product market fit, right?
I believe we are already almost product market fit. Actually, we do lots of R&D and in different market. We start working for SMEs or some SMEs plus, that means small businesses, but they are not actually paying us. We have more than 400 acquisition in SME level, but we are not able to get payment from them. That's why we start operating in brands, and we found that brands are okay for us.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So what I would do is I would use the seed money to validate your new strategy with the brands. Once you've used that to validate the brands, then use your Series A funding to go to the international market, to go to Nepal and all the other countries, right? Usually that's the process, because Series A, they want you to have more proven model with good data and good numbers, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. There's one last question. Yeah. Go.
If you can share your mail address, then I can share our pitch deck
Sure.
with you.
No problem.
For
Yeah.
next step.
In the thing. So when you send me your pitch deck, I will treat it as just give you feedback. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. Sure.
And then there's one last question, and I think that would probably be it for today, is what's a good ratio of market size versus company valuation? How does make the investor believe the market is big enough? So it's not really the market size that we work out the validation, valuation for. It's your potential of getting so much, say, revenue or GMV, or what can you take out of a market. Then from there, we can work out your valuation through a multiple. So if you're talking about, say, a SaaS company with no real labor costs, or, you know, a very simple one, you could get a 10 times valuation on your revenue, right? So whatever revenue you've got, your valuation will be 10 times bigger than that. But then there are other companies like logistics company where it's more like a one-to-one. If you're making $100,000, then your valuation, say $100,000 a month, then it's multiple, then you're about $1.2 million a year, right? Then your valuation is about $1.2 million, right? It's very hard to get that. But if it was a tech company, it would be $12 million all of a sudden, right? So it's not really that. We just want to know the market is big enough for you to grow into. I hope that answers your question. All right, any last questions before we finish up for today? No, I think that's about it. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, everyone.
Michael, thank you so very much for joining us. I think, you know, there's no questions right now, but really what these sessions do is give everybody questions to walk away with and think about a little bit more. So it's been extremely valuable. I think I speak for everyone when I say that. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you again. Team, the recording will be available via, I think, Shradesh. Shradesh, where can everyone find the recording?
Yeah, Kathy, I'll be sharing the recording through YouTube channel, so you can refer that.
Amazing. Well, everyone, have a great day. Michael, thank you so much for your simplicity. I think that's also what came across today. It was just so accessible, such easy information that we can all do stuff with straight away. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone. Bye.